In the previous video, I showed you how to write the beats and offbeats into the score of Brahms's Lullaby, but of course that information isn't very useful unless you can actually translate it into playing the tune rhythmically accurately, and we're going to do that using a metronome. Now, in my experience of teaching people one-on-one, people usually go through phases with the metronome when they're learning it for the first time. They usually hate it for the first couple of weeks, and then they go into a phase where they actually get so used to playing with it that they become slightly dependent on it and don't feel comfortable playing without it. And then eventually they realize they can play rhythmically accurately with or without the metronome. So I would urge you to stick with the metronome until you at least get to the second phase. So you need to push through the initial painful period of it feeling really uncomfortable and difficult and get to the second phase. And the reason for that is because I would say that playing out of time is the piano equivalent of singing out of tune. When people sing out of tune, they don't realize they're singing out of tune, but it sounds really painful to listen to for other people. And if you're playing the piano out of time, it has the same effect. It doesn't sound good when you're listening to it, but you yourself don't realize you're doing it. When you're playing out of time, your brain is kind of tricking you into thinking you're playing in time when you're not. And the only way of really being sure that you're playing in time is to measure yourself against some kind of external accountability device, and that is a metronome. By the way, the main reason that people play out of time as well is because they're concentrating so much on getting the notes right and the fingering and the coordination and so on that they don't have any mental energy left to focus on the timing. So the main solution to playing in time is first of all to master all of those elements. You need to be completely on top of the notes and the fingering and the coordination and all the other aspects of the piece so that you can then entirely concentrate on playing in time. And the way to practice that is with a metronome. So in this particular video, we're going to look at Brahms's Lullaby, and we'll just stick with the first phrase. And I'll lead you through a step-by-step process showing how you can translate that information we worked out in the previous video, which is writing beats and bars and writing offbeats under certain notes if they're offbeat, and use a metronome to get from that kind of theoretical position to actually the practical stage of playing it accurately. So the first stage, as I just mentioned, is making sure you're on top of the notes. So with this piece, just make sure you can play the right hand first line accurately by itself, the right notes with the right fingers, but it doesn't have to be in time. So kind of like that. Doesn't sound very musical, but just make sure you can play the notes with the right fingers without really having to think about it. So then you can entirely concentrate on the rhythm. And then the next step is actually to practice saying the beats without even playing the notes. So we're just going to focus on saying the beats that you've written down in time with the metronome. So I have set the metronome to 65 BPM. By the way, if you don't have it on your keyboard, of course, you can download an app on your phone or something like that, play it off your computer. Main thing is you have a consistent beat and you know how fast it's going. So I've set the metronome to 65 BPM, that's beats per minute, and it sounds like this. And to begin with, we're just going to count in time with a metronome. And if you're completely new to this, start by just counting the beats. Don't even count the offbeats. Just see if you can say 1, 2, 3 repeatedly in time with the clicks. So first of all, listen to the clicks for a few clicks so you get used to the speed. And then you're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So make sure you can do that consistently, accurately. See if you can do it for a whole minute without speeding up or slowing down. It might be easy for a couple of bars, and then you'll find your mind is wandering and you'll start counting slightly out of time, slightly too fast or too slow. But it's really a question of concentration and being able to keep a consistent rhythm. That's very important for any piece of music. And once you can do that, the next step then is to start adding in the offbeats and getting them in the right place. And we're going to do this in sections rather than doing a whole line at a time. So to begin with, we'll just take that first bar and the first beat of the second bar. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 1. And I'm actually going to first demonstrate the wrong way of doing this because this is such a common mistake. I need to kind of signpost it so that you can avoid it. The most common mistake when counting offbeats is to say the and on a click. So in the bar, we wrote in 1, 2, 3, and then we put a plus sign after that, underneath that last note, because that's going on an offbeat. So that offbeat should go between two clicks, the clicks of the beats. But often people make the mistake of putting the plus sign saying and on the beat like this. So this is the wrong way of doing it. The wrong way is 1, 2, 3, and 1. So saying the and on the click, I'll just demonstrate it one more time. 1, 2, 3, and 1. That is the wrong way to do it. What I basically did there was I counted to 4. I counted 4 beats in a bar. And instead of saying 4, I just said and, which should be an offbeat. Instead, that and should go between 2 clicks. It should go between 3 and 1. So only the numbers should go on clicks. This is the right way of doing it. 1, 2, 3, and 1. So 3 goes on one click, 1 goes on the next click, and the and goes in between those two. I'll do it the right way again. 1, 2, 3, and 1. So that is the first bar and the first beat of the second bar. So now let's do the second bar and the first beat of the third bar. So the pattern is a little bit different here. We have 1, 2, and 3, 1. So once again, I'll just demonstrate the wrong way of doing it because it cropped up so much in one-on-one lessons when I was teaching people. The wrong way is 1, 2, and 3, 1. Basically putting the offbeat on a click. It's clearly not how you should count an offbeat. It should be in between clicks. The correct way is like this. 1, 2, and 3, 1. And again, 1, 2, and 3, 1. So now let's put those two together. And again, the whole pattern is basically we're going to say the numbers on the clicks, and then the ands, the offbeat should go in between clicks. So putting those two bits together, we have 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. I'll do it just one more time. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. So if you're practicing by yourself, repeat it more times than that so you can get it consistently accurately. See if you can get it 5, 6, 7, 8 times right in a row without making a mistake before moving on to the next step. I'm not going to repeat it that many times because it would make this video pretty insufferable to watch. But when you're practicing by yourself, do repeat these steps much more than I'm doing them in the video. So the next step now is getting rid of the metronome, bringing back the notes. So in this step, we're going to be playing the notes while counting out loud at the same time. And it doesn't have to be perfectly in time, but we do need to get the notes and the numbers perfectly synchronized. And once again, let's do it in small sections. If you do, too long a section, you'll slip up or get confused. So again, let's stick to just doing the first bar, 1, 2, 3, and 1, and the first beat of the second bar. And that's going to correspond with these 3 notes. And they're going to go on 3 and 1. So counting and playing at the same time is really hard, by the way. It will take you a bit of practice to get this right if you haven't done it before. So we'll maybe do it a bit slower, but counting and playing at the same time, that first bar is going to be 1, 2, 3, and 1. So putting those 3 notes on 3 and 1. Again, 1, 2, 3, and 1. So repeat that a few times by yourself. Next bar and the first beat of the third bar is going to be 1, 2, and 3, 1. And it's going to correspond with these notes. And the tricky bit, the C just goes on the 1s. That's pretty straightforward. The harder bit is getting these 2 notes on and 3. So they need to go on and 3. So we have 1, 2, and 3, 1. Do it one more time. Again, 1, 2, and 3, 1. And once you're comfortable with that, you can put those 2 sections together. So then you have 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. I'll do that one more time and then we'll move on to the next step. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. So that is how you get a phrase at least matching up with the beats. Next step then is to make sure those beats are in time. So we're going to bring back the metronome. And because this is trickier, let's slow the metronome down a tiny bit. It was on 65 before. Let's slow it down to 60 BPM. 60 beats per minute is, of course, 1 beat per second, because there are 60 seconds in a minute. I would say that usually, of course, playing something in a slower metronome speed is easier, unless you start going, a fair bit below 60. If you're playing something at 50 BPM or 45 BPM, it's actually so slow it starts becoming harder to play in time, because the beats are so far apart in time that it gets harder to predict exactly when the next beat is going to happen. So oddly enough, in general, slower is easier, but you know, if you're getting as slow as 50 BPM, I think it starts getting harder. So we'll do this at 60. Once again, listen to the metronome for a few clicks before you start playing so that you're going to play in time. And let's do it a bar at a time. So first bar, 1, 2, 3, and 1. We'll rush through this slightly. Second bar is going to be 1, 2, and 3, 1. And then we just put those two bits together. So 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. Do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1. Once you've done that quite a few times and you get it reliably accurate, that's too many adjectives, too many adverbs, in fact. Anyway, sorry, confusing myself with English grammar. Clearly can't do music and English at the same time. Then you can start dropping the beats, by which I mean not saying them out loud. If you've repeated the beats enough out loud, you'll kind of have them, you'll hear them in your head even when you're playing. So then the next step is just to play this bit of the tune in time with the metronome. So then you'll have... which is exactly in time. And when you get it exactly right, you should get the satisfaction of hearing the click exactly when you're playing some of the notes, of course, if they're on beats. So again. And then once you can do that a few times right, you can speed up the metronome. So fast forwarding a bit, let's move it up to 75. I mean, if you're practicing by yourself, you might want a few intermediate steps, you know, 60, 65, 70, and 75, and so on. So then it's going to be... and so on. And then eventually, of course, you can practice the whole piece like this. You'll eventually get every single phrase in time at a decent speed without having to count out loud. And then you've mastered the rhythm of the piece. So you'll end up with something like this. In terms of the beats, I'll just demonstrate the first couple of phrases with me counting out loud so you can see how these beats and offbeats fit into a metronome. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, and 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 1, and 2, 3, 1. So that, if you're not used to it, is pretty tricky to get right first time round. But with practice, of course, it'll become second nature. And then, of course, the more you practice, eventually I think sort of counting the beats out loud will be a bit like stabilizers on a bicycle. It's kind of useful when you're first learning it, but at some point you can dispense with counting the beats out loud and you'll just be able to sort of read the rhythm on the page, have a metronome going, and get the tune in time. So one last thing to say about this, as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, the left hand is entirely on clicks, right? So essentially, if you get the left hand in time and you're playing it hands together, that'll automatically get the right hand in time pretty much, as long as you have the correct right hand notes matching up with the left hand notes. However, I would say that being able to play a tune in time with a metronome by itself without using the left hand as a kind of guide to get the right hand right is a really important skill. You know, you might be playing a single melody line in an ensemble, like, you know, in a jazz group in the future or something like that, or in an orchestra, and you need to be able to play a melody line in time and practice it just with the metronome without having the left hand or a regular left hand as a guide. So that is why I walked you through this video step by step, showing you how to translate those beats and offbeats into playing a tune accurately. So that is the kind of blueprint. You can do that with any piece. Brahms's Lullaby I picked because it's both kind of irregular but also pretty straightforward. We don't have any quarter beats in it like we do in some other pieces in this course. And hopefully from just analyzing that first phrase, you can understand the principle and apply it to learn the other phrases and then other pieces and play them in time.